It's funny. The first time Master had me lecture, I was still only 22 years old. I met him when I was 22 in September. I was still 22 in May when I got word that he wanted me to lecture in his place in San Diego and give Kriya. I had attended only one initiation, my own. And he wanted me to give Kriya and to lecture in his place. And I knew, because it was my job at the time, to send out the announcements to the newspapers who would be lecturing where. And I knew that he had not spoken in San Diego for 2 months. And I knew how eager they were that he come back. And now I had to go, a little boy of 22. And I was so sorry for those poor people. I didn't have time for stage fright. Karma yoga means to give up the fruits of action, not to be attached to what you're doing, to the point where you come to realize that you're not even doing it. Because as long as you think, I am acting, you're still not acting properly. Whereas as you give up the fruits of action and cease to be involved in them, cease to be attached to them, you begin to realize that there's something flowing through you, taking over. And that when that happens, he's the one doing it. And then, well, in the beginning, you have to keep doing. I remember back many years ago when I was early lecturing, and Master told me that I must pray beforehand and let God talk through me, and I always did that. But one day in the middle of a lecture, I thought, well, if I must let God talk through me, maybe I should just completely shut up and let him start talking. It was an experiment. I didn't really believe that would happen that way necessarily, but I wanted to know. And so in the middle of my talk, I stopped and waited and waited and waited. 2 minutes, people were perspiring, thinking I'd frozen with fear, but I was very comfortably and calmly waiting for God to talk and praying to him all the time inside. Come on, say something. He didn't say a word. And then I came to understand that I had to do it, but keep in tune with him and let his inspiration come. And in fact, that's how it's happened, that when you do it in that way, you're not really thinking, I'm doing it. You're thinking, he's doing it. And the more you have that thought, the more you come to a level where things happen even if you don't do anything. Because that does come in the end.
Swamiji, how can one develop sweetness in oneself?
The reason people are so hard in this world is that they're always ready for attack. They expect to be attacked, mainly because they themselves are ready to attack. When you're steeled for battle, it's not possible to be sweet and soft and kind. But when you love God, and when you see God in others and don't want to hurt anybody, you naturally become soft. I remember when a group of us disciples of Master met Anandamoyi Ma, who was a great saint, woman saint in India. She said, they're so soft. That is what develops on the spiritual path. When you love God, you know that he'll take care of you. You know that whatever happens, if you die, if people punish you or persecute you, it doesn't matter. It's all God. I had a dream a few weeks ago that enemies of mine were burning me at the stake. And this is the sort of thing that people would be horrified at. But I was perfectly willing to accept it. And in the dream, as can happen, they were sitting at a banquet table nearby, laughing and joking and drinking together and so on. I didn't care. I accepted it. Then, as the flames were coming up, friends of mine came and saved me. I was indifferent. If they want to save me, fine. If I'm to burn, I thought, well, the pain will be temporary, and I won't have a body anymore, and I'll be free from the pain. So it didn't matter. When you have that attitude, then you're not tense to be ready for attack. You don't have to defend yourself. There's nothing there to defend. So the less, let's put it this way, the less you have of ego consciousness, the less you feel that you need to defend. I had an interesting experience some years ago. I was invited to a conference on the other side of America in the state of Virginia, and several famous people, speakers and so on, were invited, and I'm somewhat known, but I'm not on the circuit. I don't go talking around the country, and so I was less known. Peter Caddy from Findhorn and other fairly well-known people were there, and I invited them all out to dinner. Well, I was at the table, I was paying for the meal, they were all talking to each other and ignoring me. I was the only one. The whole conference was about how to start communities. The man who said it wanted to start a community, never did. I was the only one, you can say, who knew what he was talking about. And they were ignoring me. I thought, this is absolutely wonderful to be totally unimportant. It's a freeing feeling. So if people insult you, if people don't accept your worth, which of course I do have, at least I've started a successful community, then you feel happy in yourself. There's so much freedom from that. There's no tension. No tension of protecting something that to you just isn't there. People want to insult you, thank them. They at least are trying to help you.
Swami, that sounds like an advanced level of self-confidence or self...
Well, you have self-confidence because there's no self to be confident of. You're the true self, which is the self of everybody. You're not this little self that is separate from yourself and has to defend itself when yourself attacks this self. You're in both selves, and it doesn't matter.
It also sounds like an advanced degree of being centered in the self,
I guess so, yeah.
And content there.
Yeah.
So without needing anything from anyone or anything.
And when you have that, then you think in terms of what you can give to others. You don't think in terms of what you're getting. When I've lectured from the age of 22, I didn't want to lecture, but my guru put me in that position. He told me you'd better learn to like it. It's what you'll have to do. But I've never been nervous. And the reason was, basically, I mean, I've made the joke of it that I felt that if they thought I was a fool, I was probably a fool anyway, it didn't matter. But the truth of it is that I'm much more interested in what I'm giving to people than in what I get back in terms of their opinion of me. I don't think about their opinion. I think in terms of what I know is true, which I'm willing to share with them. So if you make teaching, for example, and this is the example I've given, if you make teaching a matter of sharing, not of talking to people, telling people, then there's no nervousness there.
Swamiji, for people who are trying to develop that kind of centeredness where you're not nervous in anything you have to do, you're not wanting anything, you're only thinking of giving, how can people achieve that?
Well, I think I've said how they can achieve it by getting those attitudes, by thinking in terms of giving instead of getting. Don't worry about what other people like of what you've said. Don't worry whether they like it at all. But if they're willing to listen, tell them. And if they aren't willing, then be happy enough in yourself. You don't have to, they don't owe it to you to listen to you. And so if they don't like it, fine.
Swami, why would your guru have asked you to lecture?
I think probably because in past lives I had many doubts. He said you were eaten up with doubts. I don't have doubts in this lifetime, but I think it's a way of helping me to completely overcome those doubts. It's a burden it's a debt that I have to other people to help them overcome their doubts. And that's what I want to share with people. When I come upon an explanation that is crystal clear, I'm delighted. I'm just as delighted as other people would be on having a wonderful banquet to go to. I thought, for example, of a sheet of ice. You can't break through the whole sheet of ice at once, but you can drill at one point. That's a beautiful example. We need to know ourselves. We don't need to worry about understanding the world, reading all the books we can read, understanding other people. All we need to know is drill at this one point of ego. When you've gotten to your own center, then you've broken through the ice and gotten into the water underneath, the water of truth. So that's a wonderful example. And this sort of thing, to me, is food.
So the purpose of all that we go through this evolution and becoming centered, etc., is to get into that consciousness that pervades the universe, that created.
Ultimately, that's the purpose of it. The goal of life is to find out who we are. And who we are, we're a part of that infinite. And when we can realize that that is who we are, not this little body, we find the fulfillment that the body alone could never give us.
So this whole world is a school, and all the incarnations are classes in that school.
And it's not enough even to want to go to heaven. Heaven, when Jesus used the words, he didn't mean that heaven. He meant infinite consciousness.
Swami, just a curiosity about the lecturing. Did you find it difficult in the beginning to lecture?
No, I didn't. I have to admit that for the first 7 years, I didn't really take it seriously. Mm-hmm. I just thought that it was my bad karma that I would have to lecture. Other people could be back home meditating, and here I had to be out talking about these things. Then gradually I found over a period of time that what I had said saved somebody from suicide. And something else I had said made a believer of somebody who had been an atheist. And I began to see that there is worth in it. And so then I began to take it seriously. And I tried to prepare my talks. But on certain occasions I didn't have time to prepare them. And more people than usual thanked me for my lecture. And I thought, well, if I don't need to prepare, then why bother? So since then I've never prepared. And I find that God does tell me what to say.
And how do you experience that? Sometimes you say, I don't know the answer to a question, and then the answer comes?
It does happen sometimes. I say I don't know, and suddenly in giving up that effort to reach for the answer and relaxing, then suddenly the answer is there. So by being completely relaxed in myself, by not being nervous, it amazes me when people read their lectures. Mm-hmm. I think of lecturing as talking to people. Mm-hmm. And in that way, you don't come to a tea party with a list of things that you're going to say. It comes spontaneously. So I think when you're relaxed, it comes more easily.
Swami, can you feel people's thoughts when you're speaking to them?
For a long time, when I was giving classes and so on, I would meditate in a room near where people were coming, and I would try to tune into their consciousness as they were entering the hall. And I'd ask myself, I'd try to understand what they needed, so I didn't get up and tell them what I wanted to say, but what they wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. And I always try to lecture in that way. If they say, if they want to hear something is wrong, I don't tell them that, but that which will help this person. I pray to be guided to understand what will help him.
Do you have to adjust your talk then to the level of your audience?
Yes, I do. There was one talk, the most difficult I ever had to give. It was to a school, and there were very skeptical students, and there were also devotees. And to talk to both groups at once was very difficult. But I try to reach them where they are, and That's another reason why I enjoy questions and answer sessions like this, because I can tune into the question itself. But when I have to lecture to a crowd, I know one time in Vancouver, there were about 1,000 people there, and somebody very egotistical was saying, "Is this just going to be a monologue?" And I said, "I'm sorry, but we can't talk like that because there are too many people here. What you ask may not be pertinent to what they want to hear. So I have to try to tune into your consciousness." But I try to do that. And it was very well received too, because although it was another country, different culture in a way, nonetheless, it tuned into them.
You have lectured in so many countries, Swamiji.
I have, yeah. And fortunately, I know a lot of languages, and so I can lecture in several languages too, and that helps. But the main thing is to have respect for people. I don't talk down to anybody. I've never tried to teach people. I've tried to share what I know. And the karma yogi also reaches that point where if his motives are pure, he finally sees that God is the doer, and then he begins to feel God. And he goes into that silence. And he realizes the greatest karma yoga of all is simply to offer yourself to God. This world is God's responsibility. We need to purify ourselves by helping and serving. And in fact, when, for example, I teach you, some of you say, "I help you." The truth is, you help me. Because you give me an opportunity to serve in such a way that I can come closer to God in the way my Guru told me to do it. But you see, in that, we come to realize that the only really important thing isn't the work that we do, isn't the people we help, isn't the things that the books we write and all that. Those things are basically completely without meaning. Just sort of shuffling the deck, one sequence of cards or another. Ultimately, the only thing that is important is our love for God. And whether at the end of this incarnation we will have pleased Him. We were born only for that, not to do anything,